Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar entitled very simply Request Forms and Reports. In terms of the introductions for today, my name is Peter Webster. I'm an account manager here at WRIKE in Dublin in our EMEA headquarters. I'm joined by my colleague and good friend Craig McCoy, who's one of our best customer success managers here at WRIKE.
Hey guys, thanks everyone for attending today. So my role here at WRIKE, I help customers get onboarded successfully. I act as a consultant, so I also help them map all the processes into WRIKE. I also want to help people refine their processes, as they go through that journey with WRIKE, and just ensure that the whole team is adopted there. So I'll just pass it back to you, Peter.
Cool, thanks Craig. In terms of, just before we launch into the webinar today, we just wanted to mention an upcoming event in London that we're very excited about. My colleague is actually just going to drop the link to the event into the chat. But yeah, it's an event around productivity within WRIKE. We're going to have some keynote speakers. Our managing director will be presenting and our chief revenue officer. And we're also going to have a real cool customer panel from customers who are using WRIKE effectively and I guess their journey with WRIKE. So please feel free to register. In terms of the agenda for today, we're going to be covering off request forms, which is a way to intake information into WRIKE. We're going to be covering off reports, and the majority of today's webinar will be covered off in a live demo. We expected the webinar to last no longer than about 30 minutes. And we're going to be leaving about 5 minutes at the end of the webinar for any questions that people might have. But with that said, if you do have any questions as we go through the webinar today, please feel free to type them into the chat and we will answer them as we go through the webinar. Cool, so moving on to request forms. So what are request forms? So for me, request forms are a way to effectively mandate the intake of information into WRIKE. So in simple terms, if somebody needs to submit a task, or if somebody wants to create a project, and instead of them wondering, I guess, what information is required from them, that information is already kind of pre-mandated within a request form. Craig, from your experience in working with request forms on a daily basis, pass it over to you, in relation to kind of any kind of successes you've seen, or what impact do you feel that request forms have on teams?
Request forms are great for standardizing your intake of work. So a lot of time when I'm working with people or with my clients, they have no way to intake work or how a project would start or how a task would start. So a lot of people are just using phone calls to kick off a project. They're actually using emails, and sometimes they're even just using sticky notes, or it's even word to word when you're walking by someone in the hall. And what we can do here in WRIKE is we can actually standardize a set of questions. And what happens is that is submitted by the user, and it drops into a special bucket in WRIKE that has a project owner, or let's say a traffic manager, who can take that information and then kick off the project. So we've covered kind of a few points there on the screen, but before I just kind of jump onto the next slide, or let Peter jump onto the next slide, we just want to get a kind of gauge maybe how many people are using request forms and maybe what you use them for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to launch up a poll, and it's a poll just asking, how do you intake your requests right now? Do you use phones, emails, or a ticketing system? So I'm just going to leave that there just for about 30 seconds for you guys to fill out. Okay, excellent. Thanks, guys. I'm just going to stop that now, and I will let Peter jump onto the next part of the presentation.
Cool, thanks, Craig. And the other thing that we're going to be covering off in the live demo today is reports. Reports are an extremely powerful feature within WRIKE when used effectively. And there's a wealth of information, I guess, at your fingertips, and it can be a great feature particularly for management to get the information that they need and really kind of help them, I guess, run their business. Craig, again, over to you. What are your experience for teams that have kind of managed to successfully adopt reports within WRIKE?
Yeah. So what I always say is we're capturing all of this information in WRIKE. So you have, you're capturing your tasks, your projects. If you want to track budget and time, even, it's all there. And what we kind of happen is people forget maybe to use reports, or they want to maximize that output. And reports are great to do that. We could build certain filters, we can put in certain types of projects, or we can even build reports on, departmental kind of organizational structure and get all of that data out there. So what happens is, it saves you time, it gives you that big picture, you get this whole 360 kind of visibility on it. It also lets you identify those bottlenecks. And the plus as well, it's real-time data. So when you build that report, you don't have to build it again. It's just constantly updating that information.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks, Craig. So with that, guys, we're going to move on to the live demo. If anybody does have any questions, as we said, feel free to type them into the chat as we go.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. So I'm going to take you through a live demo today, guys. Just let me make my screen a little bit bigger. And if you have any issues seeing my screen or whatever, just drop a comment into the chat and we can fix that for you. So let me just open this up for you guys. So I've built out a bit of a structure for us today, and everyone is pretty much familiar with WRIKE at the moment and the folder structure. So we're just going to work on my pretend company, Acme, kind of what I always use, and I've kind of broken it into just departments that we have here. So there's HR, ICT, and marketing. I've also created a certain folder called incoming requests. So this is where all our information is going to go. And then any live projects I just have sitting here, as well as some completed projects and some templates. So this is just data that I've built for this webinar. And we'll be able to kind of digest this for request forms and also for reports. So the key thing, or the first thing we're going to focus on at the moment, is the request forms. So I think a lot of our kind of people on the call at the moment are using request forms, and some people are not using it. So the best way to explain this is to kind of show you where it is. So we have this big plus button up here on the screen. And what you can do is you can obviously create a task or a project or a folder. But if you've enabled request forms, you can also do that here. And just let me select here and I'll show you kind of the different type of request forms that you can use. So as I'm working with my customers and setting all of these up with them, I've come across so many different types of request forms. Whether it's a software implementation, a bug request form, if a marketing team want to bring in a design brief, if someone wants to host an event, a holiday request, a newsletter, purchase forms. I've even saw people, in companies use this for, requesting hardware for their computers or for their desk. So this is a standardized way to catch all that information. So you don't have to worry about doing no phone calls. You don't have to worry about emails. You come into WRIKE and you submit a request. Also, the good thing about this as well is it's not just internal. You can make a request form external. So pretty much you can give this link to anyone, and I'll show you that now in a second. And anyone can submit a request. So if you've got external parties that you want to know or the information that they need to provide you in order to kick off a project or a task, you can do that. So for today, I'm just going to use my Acme implementation request form, and we're going to run through that process. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to fill out this form, and I've built it out here, so I have. So I'm just going to call this one, I'm just going to call it, let's say, MJ's project, just so we know where it is. And what I have here is I just have some fields. We can make them mandatory, so users have to fill in this information. So I'm just going to say mj@email.com just for this. Oops. So MJ is the owner. I'm just going to call it mj@email.com. What we can do is we can pick a start date. So when should this project kick off? Let's say tomorrow. I have some other fields here as well. So we got the industry type. So we can say that this is for a engineering company. We can say that the company is 300 to 400 people big. It's on-site or offsite. You can talk about what region it's in. So we say it's in EMEA. The country could be England. And we could say that it's just London. Obviously, we can put in a bigger address there. Stuff I like to capture when I'm doing this is like the champions' names, or who's going to be the experts that I'm going to talk to in this company. So I'm just going to say Jane for now. You can also add in images. So whether you're using your computer or whatever, you can just drag in an image or an Excel file, or like if someone's purchasing something, it may be like a PO or something. And you can add in some additional information here. I'm just going to say add information, or start project ASAP, basically, just so we know. Just one thing before I submit this. These are completely customizable, these forms. So you can go in and you can build it to suit your needs. It's not set in stone, what you see here. So just let me submit this guy. And what happens is I've submitted this form to jump into my Acme incoming request form. So basically, I like to call this like my incoming folder or my incoming bucket. And what you'll see here is this is the project information. It has an owner, but also it has all the tasks here. And that's where we capture all the information.
Cool. Craig, can I ask you a quick question there? You filled in a lot of detail in relation to the actual form itself. Where does that actually appear?
Yeah, so good question. What I've done is I've mapped it to come into the custom fields. So as you can see, like questions like the organization size, the champion's names, the country, address, it's all popping in here. And that's just a recent new feature that we launched there last week. It was, I think a lot of people were requesting it. It was mapping custom fields to request forms. So feel free to reach out. We've got some help guides on that online, and you can go in and use it. It's really powerful. It's going to be really powerful when we even jump into our reports as well.
Can I just jump in as well, Craig, just to mention, for those who kind of aren't comfortable with setting up the request forms, feel free to reach out to myself and Craig if you need a little bit of help with setting them up in the first place.
Yeah, of course, guys. We're always here to help out. So, if you have our emails, just pop us and we can help you guys out. So just to jump back to this project again that I submitted, as you can see here, I had a start date that I set. And what happens is, this is mapped to a template that I have here. So essentially, when I submitted that form, it duplicated my template, and it actually created a brand new timeline. And here's my timeline here. So it realigned all my tasks to be finished by the 3rd of October. So it's just under a month long. What you can do is you can actually go in and you can add your finish date then. We can just move that to October. We could say it's October 4th if you wanted. You can then go in and you can start assigning these tasks to users. Generally, kind of what happens is you'd have a traffic manager or a project manager who do all of this for you. And you can just kind of drop in there and assign everything. If you also have like your timeline and dependencies built for this, you'll see it pops in here and it actually keeps the timeline, which is great. So you don't have to go in and like, start a whole project or add new tasks or create dependencies. It's already there. And that's from the template that we have. And then you can just go ahead and kick off that project. So it really does speed it up ASAP. Perfect. That's kind of our request form features. If you're interested in building some requests and you have the access, it can be done by an admin. So just go to account management, and on the left hand side you'll have a field called request forms, and what you can do is build a new form. And you can go in there, you can map all of that information, you can ask your questions, and you can, have a whole complete new way to kick off projects or tasks. Again, we have information on our help guide on that. We have some videos that we've done before on how to map that information. So the next thing I just want to jump into as well is I'm going to jump into the reports. So I think a lot of people do use reports and some people don't. But as I was saying earlier, the great thing about like the reports is, you're capturing all this wonderful data in WRIKE. Let's use it. Let's use it and create, some, maximize that output and see what are we completing on time, where are the bottlenecks, who is actually doing their work, what's overdue, and that's what I'm going to jump into here today. So let me just go to my report section. And great. So what I have here is I actually have a list of reports here, kind of from my demo side. But I actually just created one called Acme. And these are from the requests that have come in here. So it's all my projects that have been completed or still active. And I just use it by organization size. So basically, if I just wanted to see how many organizations between 100 to 200 have launched projects this year or have been implemented, and we can see it's 2. So I've got like Mercedes and Peter's company. If I want to see organizations between the size of 300 to 400, how many projects have been launched there? You can see that we've got some that are still in green and some are completed. And as you go across here, you can see more information. So let me go in and let me just build a report and show you how simple it is. So I go back and I'm just going to build it on, I'm just going to call it, let's call it Acme Projects again. And let's just call it 101 so I know which one it is. What you can do is, there's 2 options here. You can build it on the project cover or you can build it on the tasks. So the example I showed you a second ago is just on the project name. But let's actually jump in and have a look at the tasks this time. I'm going to do it on I want to see what's sitting in my incoming, my live projects, and maybe I want to see what is completed also. So I could have a look at completed projects and departments. We have some filters here. So you could filter out by what's active or what's finished or on hold. You could also have a look at task type, due date, and so on as well. So there's much here as well. You can also add some custom fields if you liked. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my table, and you will have another option here for column, so I'll jump into that now in 1 second. And here we go. So here's all my data. What we can do is we can just collapse that, and we can see all active tasks, which are here. The status they're in, if they're in progress, the start date, the finish date, and even the parent folder. So at least you know which project it belongs to. So this one belongs to MJ's project. And if you wanted to kind of, throw that data over here, you can do that as well, just to be beside the task name. It's easier to see. The great thing about reports is it's real data. So like I said, I think previously, you don't have to keep building these reports. And the other thing I like as well is it's interactive. So if this is shared with someone, or if it's just a private report, you can actually open it up you can actually go in and maybe change the status. You could add a description here. And my favorite part is you can actually @mention people. So like I could @mention Rick or Ross. Maybe I want to @mention a whole team, like marketing or human resources. And you could just ask for an update. Whoops, just spell that correctly. And what that does is like that just sends an email, it sends it to the WRIKE inbox, and it's just a real effective way to collaborate. There we go. And like what else you can do here is you can actually add in more data. So obviously if you want to see like the completed date, if you're tracking time, the importance, or like who actually built this task, you can add all of that information there. And if I just go over here to the right, you'll see that. So for example, the completed date here, if I go down to my completed folder, which we have here, you will see that I have a completed date, September 5th. So this is what I always like to do, drag it over. And you can see here that like the due date for this task was like August 17th, but it wasn't finished till September. So it was actually like a little bit overdue. And you can track all of that.
Great, little question for you if you don't mind. If I had pre-built some custom fields in some of my projects, so say for example, if I build kind of custom field around kind of unique information to my team, maybe priority or allocation or whatever it might be, can I run a report or can I kind of manipulate a report based on that information?
Yeah, of course. So if we were to look at let's look at that project I submitted called MJ's. So we had some custom fields here. And we can actually use that data to like manipulate or kind of maximize our type of reports. So let's focus on the type of implementation, for example. So if I go to my reports, and let's say I just wanted to do type of implementation. Oops. I'll just spell that correctly. And what you can do is I'll just do it on projects. So just a project cover. And I obviously want to do it on my department, my incoming requests, live projects, and completed projects. Now, you can actually filter it out. So we can use our custom fields here. So if I just wanted to see type of implementation, I could just hit both onsite and offsite. We can use it that way. So it only pulls in that information. So if I just hit onsite, it will only pull in onsite. I'll show you a better way that I like to do it. I just like to do it like this. So table and hit save and view. It's going to pull in all of our tasks here. So these are all of my projects. Sorry, no tasks, just a project cover. What I like to do is I like to group it. So what you can actually group here is by type of implementation. And what you have here is offsite and onsite. So if I collapse this, you will see that I've had 5 onsites and I've had 3 offsites. So that's kind of one way you can do it. You can obviously go in and you can group it differently. So maybe industry type would be really good as well. So you could go in here and you can see that you've had 3 engineering implementations. You've had 3 marketing implementations. And that's all data that you can, it's really valuable data to get for your teams. One thing I forgot to kind of explain as well is you can share this information. You can share it with users in your account, and you can even share it with like collaborator users. So when they log in, they can see this information. You can also go in and create a snapshot, and you can like open it up in a new tab. You can copy that URL, and you can email that to anyone, and they can go in. It can be anyone. They don't need access to WRIKE, and you can add it. You can go in and view it, so it's live information. Or you can just directly email it to people as well. Just to put a different type of look on the reports, you can put it in column. And you can see, I've done here by user or owner, but like I said before, is maybe you want to group it by something else as well, by like industry. And you can see here then on top, so you've got you've got 2 that are in green zone for engineering and stuff like that. So it's a really nice kind of nice way to manipulate the data. So that is all. That's kind of it for today on the reports. I hope I covered everything for everyone. we have some time there left. So what I do is I actually have a quick poll as well on reports if people don't mind answering, and I can just throw it out there. So we just had a good discussion there on it, and I'm just going to launch a poll just asking people if they actually use WRIKE for reports, or perhaps they use a different tool or application such as like Excel or something, or maybe people don't create reports. That's great, guys. Thanks for answering that for me. Uh, so we have some time there for some questions. So let me I'm just going to pause my screen here, and I'm going to stop this poll, and we're going to take a look at some questions and see what we can answer. So just hold on there for 1 second.
Cool. Thanks for that, Craig. That's awesome. Okay, just to fly through a couple of questions, Craig, if you don't mind. Are you limited to the number? Are you limited to number of how many custom fields you can map to? That's a good question.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. From what I aware of, no, not at the moment. I've built some really like detailed request forms with a lot of custom fields and mapping to different pages, and haven't come across anything. What we'll do is we'll just write that one down, and we'll get back to you guys on that. But for now, I take it as a no.
Cool. Is there a way to filter out subtasks within tasks on the report?
That is a really good question. No, so subtasks are actually come across as separate tasks in the reports. So they act as individual or their own tasks in the reports for now.
Cool. Another question here that's similar, but maybe slightly different. Is there a limit to the number of custom fields you can have in a project?
No limits. I haven't come across any limits yet, and I think that's going to be like this other question as well. What I would say is just from experience, when you have a lot of custom fields in there, just make sure that the correct person is adding those custom fields in there. Don't make everyone an owner of them. It can cause some confusion and so forth. So just watch that. But again, yeah, good question. One for both of us to follow up on.
Can you calculate project status from task statuses? So, for example, a percentage of tasks completed, for instance.
No. So one way that you can do that is it won't do percentages, and there's a few reasons behind that, and it's we've heard this a few times, and a lot of companies operate differently. Is do we give each task a certain weight or a certain type of effort, and then some people just say every task should have an equal effort. So it's something that we're looking at ourselves to try kind of identify, and I suppose best approach for everyone. If I was to look at maybe a report, for example, let me just share my screen once more. You can maybe perhaps see what's completed and not completed, or in a certain workflow, so in progress. And that's kind of the way that I kind of envisage or like to kind of say that. So if I go to reports, it's just taking its time. Now there is another workaround for that as well, and you can have a custom field called percentage. So if you want to say that it's 100% completed, you will have to manually tick that. But again, it's kind of manually done. Let me just get into my reports here, and I'll see what's going on. I think I just need to refresh my page.
Okay, another question here, Craig, just in the meantime. Any chance I'll be able to group by project in the time log reports?
Group by project. Good question. So I presume this is the time log reports. Our new, that's the new reporting feature. So let's just check it out here. Sorry guys, I'm just waiting for this to load. Some technical difficulties. Let me just try open up a new tab here and get into this. Sorry guys, I think it's slowing down with the conference call.
No problem, Craig. I think we're kind of bang on the half hour now. I'm kind of conscious of people's time. Maybe we can wrap it up. There is a ton more questions, guys. So if we haven't answered your question, we will get back to you on an individual basis. I'd just like to say special thanks to everybody who attended the webinar today. Much appreciated. And thanks to Craig and the team here. And
yeah, guys, really appreciate everyone turning up. Feel free to send us questions. I'm more than happy to go through all of them and get back to everyone with an answer. That's what I'm here for. Okay,
cool.
thanks everyone.
Thanks, Craig. Have a good day, guys.